Hi guys, Jack Rogers here and welcome to another lesson inside of Facebook Ads Mastery. And in this lesson we are going to be talking all about instant forms. We're going to be talking about when to use them, how to use them, what settings you should use, and just some general tips and tricks that I have learned over the past few years of being a Facebook advertiser. Now we'll dive into sort of the key differences between website leads and instant form leads. And unfortunately it's not a clear-cut decision on which one you should use. And the reason behind that is what I personally tend to find is instant forms will bring you more leads at a better cost per lead, but the downside of that is the lead quality tends to be slightly lower. And in terms of like the reason behind that is with instant forms, most of the time our audience comes on, they click the ad, their details are automatically populated and they just press submit, right? It's super easy to do. And just to sort of put this into an example for you, before I joined Heath Media, I actually had my own agency and we generated booked calls for people, right? So we would generate the lead and then we would nurture them to get them on a call. And I quite often found that when I was ringing leads up from the instant form, and I am a massive fan, as you've probably heard me say 100 times in this course, to ring the lead within 5 minutes of them submitting the form. And I had it on several occasions, not a really high percentage, but I had maybe like 5 to 10% of the time I would ring up the lead and they would have absolutely no idea that they've even signed up for it, even within sort of 5 to 10 minutes of ringing them up, right? So that's something to sort of bear in mind across the board. Now with website leads, it's essentially the opposite, right? You tend to see less leads at a higher cost per lead, but the quality tends to be better. Now with everything that I've just said, you might be thinking that I'm pushing more towards landing page for it, where to be completely honest, I personally prefer instant forms, just because as long as we have a really robust and strict follow-up process, so we're ringing leads within 5 to 10 minutes of it coming through, we are sending them SMS and emails every day for 7 days after they submit, then you will get hold of them at some point. And with instant forms, Facebook are obviously pushing this system a lot more than what they're pushing websites, mainly because with instant forms, people obviously stay on Meta platforms, which is obviously better for Facebook. So like I said, it's something to test out. I am personally quite a big advocate of using instant forms, but I've seen either approach work really well. One thing you just want to make sure that you do when you test it out is to analyze it beyond the funnel, beyond just leads, right? Because what you'll find, what I've sort of regurgitated, is you'll see like 9 times out of 10, 90% of cases, you will see a lower cost per lead on instant forms, but the cost per lead doesn't matter, right? And what I'm sort of trying to get at here is you could generate 100 leads on instant forms and not have a single conversion, but you could generate 10 leads through your website and you can have clients book from that. So when you compare the two, what you want to make sure you've got is a robust system so you can track where each of those sales have come from, whether it's been through the website or whether it's been through the instant form. So moving down to the actual instant form itself, and what we can do is come down to destination, instant form, and create. So a couple of ones that you can essentially do here, and what I would personally do in terms of like tracking purposes as well, is each ad should have its own instant form. So what I would personally do here is I would do top of funnel, creative test, because if we can see here, if I just go off this, we can see top of funnel creative test. And what I would do here is if we say this is TOF/CT, we just put ad 1. And then I would name that ad 1. And when I create my second ad, I would essentially, if I just create this form here, so I've just paused that and then created an ad. So what I would then do is if I just duplicate this out, just for the sake of it, and I would then change that to ad 2, what I would do is duplicate this form, call it ad 2, and then just create that form. So each of those ads have a separate form, and that is tying into the point that I've previously mentioned with the fact that you want to essentially track the full funnel here. And when you essentially download the lead list that comes from this, you will know which ad has actually generated the most sales rather than generating the most leads, because I've seen it time and time again that ad 2 might have a lower cost per lead, but it's got a higher cost per sale than what ad 1 does. So again, that's something that you just want to track. Now, let's go on to the actual form itself, right? So outside of the naming conventions, you have 3 options here. You have more volume. So this is essentially the form that's the quickest one to fill out and submit on a mobile device. You then have higher intent, which essentially gives the user an option. So if we sort of say on more volume, for example, we run through this, you have your intro, you ask for their details, you have the privacy policy, and then they're done. If you do the higher intent one, what they actually have to do then is they have to slide to submit their details. So it's essentially just adding in an extra step. And then you've got rich creative, which is actually a little bit more involved across the board, which we can dive into in a moment. So between these two, me personally, I would always just use the more volume one. I haven't actually found any improved lead quality using the higher intent one. And to be completely honest, it sort of makes sense, right? If all they've got to do is just swipe their finger like that, I can't see how it's going to have a positive impact on lead quality personally. It's essentially almost like not having a step. So if we're going to do any out of those two, the top two, I would always choose more volume. And then the last option is rich creative again, which we can dive into in a moment. So what you then go into is the intro. And what I would personally do here is have your headline. So with your headline, you want this to be on the biggest benefit or your offer. Most likely, if you've got a strong offer, it's going to be your offer, right? And then in here, what I would personally do is just have a list of benefits, right? So do benefit 1, so on, so forth. So that's the sort of first slide. Moving on to the questions, again, you want to keep this really, really simple. I would personally just go for these 3: email address, name, phone number. You can ask more questions, and obviously I've worked with quite a few businesses where they have like quite strict guidelines for work with, but if you can avoid having them, it is better. I have actually been working with a client on the mentorship side of the business, and he has been using instant forms and having a really good cost per lead, and he's working for a business and they've actually changed the structure now, so he has to ask for their postcode on the instant form. His conversions have gone up by around 15%, like his cost per conversion, has gone up by about 15% by just adding one email field in there. So me personally, I would ask for as few details as possible. Anything else you want to ask them, you can do so when you get in contact with them. Privacy policy, you have to put a privacy policy in here. 9 times out of 10, I just put my homepage URL in here, but obviously if you have a privacy policy, pop it in. And then message for leads. So this is essentially where we say, this is the thank you page, right, of the lead form. Now, one thing that I personally do, and it's a clever little strategy here, and I've seen quite good success with it, is I will have put a headline as almost done, last step, and as an example. So what I'm personally doing here is I'm sort of trying to utilize like a hybrid of instant forms and landing page views, right? So what I do here is I do almost done, last step. To submit your details, click the button below to book a call. Now this works really well, and what I would then do in the link is just send people directly to like a Calendly page or the schedule page because they've already submitted their details at this point. You're not going to get a massive intake of people here. When I've run this in the past, I normally have about 10% of people go on to book a call then. But obviously that's 10% less people you have to chase up and follow up with, so it works really well. And the reason why I personally think that this is such an effective strategy is because when somebody starts something, they're much more inclined to finish it. Right, and it's why like multi-step funnels work really well, where like on the first slide you ask for first name, email address, phone number, you submit that, and then it takes you through to another block of questions. You submit that, goes to another block of questions, because people have that incentive to finish something once they've started. So that's a really clever little strategy that you can sort of implement across the board there. And then moving on to the last one, you have Rich Creative, which is essentially like a slightly newer feature, but you essentially get more option here. So again, you want to have your headline, so you want to put your offer in. And what I would personally do here is still stack the benefit. So I do benefit 1, benefit 2, so on and so forth, just like that. And what you can actually do then is build a story around it. So you can say how it works. You can then add steps in here. You can tell us about the product or the service. You can show social proof, and then you can have incentives. So this would be something that I would be filling out, and I would personally utilize all of these, right? So step 1 is, if you potentially want to even go down like the lead magnet approach here, is like, well, step 1, submit your details and we'll send you a free ebook. Step 2, book a call with a member of our team. And one thing that in the previous video, I speak about how people are always a little bit skeptical to jump on calls, right? And it's true. People don't like jumping on calls with businesses because they know they're going to be hard sold. One thing that I've personally implemented in the past with getting people onto the phone, and it's a very simple strategy to implement, is you just want to have a bit of a laugh and a joke with it, right? So you can say, leave your credit card at home. The first call, it's just a 15-minute intro to see if we're a good fit. There's no pressure to buy at all. Or you could do something like, I've never taken money on the first call. It's just to see if we're a good fit. Leave your credit card at home. And one that I did have I had really good success with is like, I'd have a laugh and a joke with it, right? So one of it would be like, by the way, I pinky swear not to hard sell you on the first call. It's just to see if we're a good fit. And then I'd do like, PS, in the olden days, pinky swears meant that you could cut the other person's finger off if they broke the promise. So I take my pinky swears very, very seriously. So if you are trying to push in for a call, it's absolutely fine to do so, but just make it seem to them that you're not going to sell them on the call. It's just see if we're a good fit. Otherwise, you're going to have quite a conversion rate there. So step 1 might be step 1 might be lead magnet. Step 2 might be book a call, right? So you want to build out that process. Then you want to go into the services. Now, me personally, I would only really do, just because it can get, if you want your ad to be directed to one specific service, right? Because if we use like Heath Media as an example, we don't want to advertise done with you and done for you on the same ad, because they're completely different deliverables. They're completely different services. You can't, the main aspect of done for you is we'll take everything off your hands so you can have a relaxed approach and just let somebody handle everything for you, where the done with you is we'll actually teach you step by step how to do all of these things so you can build that knowledge up yourself. So it doesn't make sense to sell it together, and in 95% of cases it never makes sense to sell both services in one ad. So with this aspect, I would just have the service that you're selling in the copy or the creative, and then you can just go into here, stack your social proof as much as you can possibly add in here, and then incentives as well. What I would personally be doing is, they give the example of like the free consultations. I wouldn't do that. I would be talking about like the urgency and scarcity. If you have any bonuses, if you're not sure on like sort of bonuses and what to include, I'd recommend watching one of the videos slightly higher up on that. And then you go into the questions, and then the same process sort of follows through the board. So I hope all that makes sense. Any questions, any concerns around lead magnet, around instant forms, please let me know, or pop a message in the school community, and me or a member of the team will reach out to you. Appreciate you all. Have good days.